All right, Shabbos, say good morning. Good morning. Let us begin by thanking all of our sponsors for this morning's share. To thank our Talmud Torah sponsor for the month of Nisan, Seid and Simhekin, for dedicating all of the Shiurim and Drashos this month to show their Hakaras Hatov to Hashem for all of His Nisim and Neflos. May HaKadosh Baruch Hu continue to bestow His Rachmanas upon us, redeem all of the hostages, bring complete Hatzlacha to Am Yisrael, to Eretz Yisrael, and Le'ilui Nishmas Yerachmiel Buck's father, Martin Buck, Motel Ben Chaim Leib HaKoin, Zichron Lebracha. To thank our Week of Learning sponsors, the Ram and Bravo families, Le'ilui Nishmas, their father, Mordechai Ben Yitzchak. We hope that in the merit of Talmud Torah, the Neshama have an Aliyah, the family Ein Nechama, and I will say, Halavai, we dedicate all of our learning in the schus of the return of all of our hostages, Hatzlacha for all of our soldiers, and Emeretz Hashem, Besaros Tovos for all of Klal Yisrael. With that, let us begin. Today's daf is Nun Dalet 54, and we are picking up Emeretz Hashem on Nun Gimel Amud Beis 53b, and we left off 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 13 lines up from the bottom. Itmar. No, Tanrabanan, sorry. Higher than that. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16 lines up from the bottom. Tanrabanan. All right, good. It'll move. Meretz Hashem. Tanrabanan. Im Gaol Yigael Ishvi Masro. So we'll say, so the pasuk over here, remember again, we are fully immersed in the topic of Meiser Sheni. And of course, as we spoke about in yesterday's daf, the excitement about being able to learn about Meiser Sheni on Erev Pesach is Baruch Hashem. Remember again, Meiser Sheni was, I should say Erev Pesach is a big time for Meiser Sheni. Pesach is a big time for Meiser Sheni because when one was being Ola Regel, when one was coming anyway to Yerushalayim, not anyway, when one was coming to Yerushalayim Yirakodesh for the Regalim, so that was an incredible opportunity, of course, to be able to bring your Meiser Sheni money, your Meiser Sheni produce with you. So therefore, again, these sugyas are very apropos. So Tanabanan. So the Gemara quotes the pasuk, Im Gaol Yigael Ishmi Ma'asro V'chamishiso Yosef Alav. So remember again, the pasuk is talking about the idea that when you would redeem your Meiser Sheni, so you would add on an additional fifth. That's the halacha. So the Gemara says, interestingly enough, Mi Ma'asro V'lo Kol Ma'asrov. So I will say, interestingly enough, the way the pasuk is phrased is, if a person will redeem from his Meiser, so there's something again, transferring sanctity from produce onto money. When you do so, you have to go ahead and add on an additional fifth. So the Gemara points out over here, the lashon of the pasuk is, if a person will redeem from his Meiser. What do we see from that? That I will say, not all types of Meiser Sheni are redeemable. So the Gemara says, so what is this coming to exclude? Prat la Meiser Sheni she'en bo shava pruta. This is coming to exclude Meiser Sheni that doesn't have a pruta. So also this goes back to yesterday's daf, that halacha l'maisa, if the Meiser Sheni is not worth a pruta, you can't redeem it onto money, which makes sense because redemption is transactional, and a transaction you can't have a transaction with something that is less than a pruta. So remember again, I both say, based on yesterday's daf, so what do you do with Meiser Sheni that is worth less than a pruta? What do you do with that? What you do with that is you redeem that essentially onto already redeemed Meiser Sheni money. Logic being, you never redeem Meiser Sheni for the exact amount. There's always a little bit of a cushion, and therefore, again, you always have leftover monies. So I will say, so just to give for, I redeemed $500 of Meiser Sheni, 2 days ago. So there's $500 sitting on my desk. That's Meiser Sheni money. It's never exact. I always added on a little bit to that, and therefore, halacha l'maisa, I can go ahead and redeem the rest. This Meiser Sheni that's less than a pruta onto those already redeemed monies. I will say, it's just an incredible metaphor. We spoke about yesterday the idea that the metaphor in that being that whenever you perform mitzvos, you should never be exact. Whenever you perform mitzvos, you should always go ahead and add on a little bit. That's true with your actual meiser. That's true with your tzedakah. That's true with whatever you're doing. Never perform mitzvos in a way that exactly meets expectations. Always exceed expectations. But I will say, but there's another element. As we saw about that yesterday, there's another element to this. When you live your spiritual life like that you always go ahead and surpass expectations a little bit, then what that does is it provides you, so to speak, with gas in the tank for those other times in life that you fall a little short. See, I would say everyone has times in life where I'm not up to it. I'm not meeting expectations. The nice part is if you spend your life exceeding expectation, then in those moments where you fall below expectations, you have some gas in the tank, you have some money in the bank, so to speak. You have a little bit of credit, a little bit of a cushion to be able to fall back on. So if you look at this as sometimes in life, your Meiser Sheni is less than a Shavar Pruta. What is that a metaphor for? Sometimes in life, you know what? I'm just not living up to expectations. That's okay. Because if you've been redeeming your Meiser Sheni all of this time at a little bit of an extra amount, you have some credit. You have some cushion upon which to fall back on. Such an incredible yisod. Itmar. Okay, so let's go weiter. So Rav Ami Amar ein bo. So we'll say, here's the interesting part. So now we've established that if Meiser Sheni is not worth a Shava Pruta, so you can't redeem it onto money. But what you can do is redeem it onto previously established or previously redeemed Meiser Sheni funds. We'll say when we say that there's not a fifth, that it's not a Shava Pruta in what? In what? So Rav Ashi says ein bo, in the Meiser itself. Rav Asi says, ein b'chumsho. No. It means that there's not a Shavar Pruta in the fifth of the Meiser Sheni. The Shavar Pruta valuation is not necessarily Meiser Sheni itself, but rather, again, it's the actual additional fifth that needs to have a Shavar Pruta as well. So that's the Machlokes Rabbi Ami and Rav Asi. We'll say, interestingly enough, the Rambam, again, I'll save this off for later on, hopefully we'll get to this today, but the Rambam himself paskins, Meiser Sheni she'in b'chumsho Shavar Pruta, ein mosif alav chomesh. So I'll say, the way the Rambam understands this over here is that halacha l'maisa, if the Meiser Sheni itself doesn't, if the chomesh of the Meiser Sheni doesn't have a Shavar Pruta, you don't add on an additional fifth for that. Okay. Rabbi Yochanan Amar ein bo, Rabbi Shmuel Silber Amar ein b'chumsho. So once again, most of this machlokes, because Rabbi Yochanan says the Pruta valuation ultimately again is in the Meiser Sheni itself. Rabbi Shmuel Silber says by the chomesh. So Meisvei Meiser Sheni she'ein bo Shavar Pruta dayo sheyomar hu v'chumsho mechulol amaos harishonos. So let's listen to this. The Brisa says as follows: if you have Meiser Sheni that is not worth a Pruta, Meiser Sheni is not worth a Pruta, it is enough to say that the Meiser Sheni itself and its chomesh should be redeemed on already set aside Meiser Sheni money. So Bishlam Lamanda Amar ein b'chumsho. So according to Mandam, who says that there needs to be a Pruta in the chomesh, Hainu diktani dayo. That's why the Brisa says dayo. It'll be enough. The afagav the bedidei isbei, that even though again halacha l'maisa of the Meiser Sheni is a Shavar Pruta, kevan de b'chumshe leka shapir. It's not enough for the Meiser Sheni itself to be a Shavar Pruta, but what? The chomesh also has to be a Shavar Pruta. That's why it uses the lashon of. That's why I use lashon of dayo. Alaman da'amar ein bo my dayo. But according to the opinion that says that it's the Meiser Sheni, there has to be a Shavar Pruta. What's the meaning of the lashon of dayo? To which the Gemara says kashya. So it says that Rambam Paskins that halacha l'maisa, when you speak about being a Shavar Pruta, it's not just the Meiser Sheni has to be a Shavar Pruta, but rather it's the chomesh that has to be a Shavar Pruta as well, in order for it to be redeemed onto funds. Incredible. Ibaylahu. So I will say now this is a very interesting shaila over here. So here's what we know. Right? We're really accumulating a lot of Meiser Sheni information. Amongst that information, I now understand that Meiser Sheni itself has to be, if I redeem my own Meiser Sheni, I have to pay a chomesh. Right? Remember again, if I redeem someone else's Meiser Sheni, or someone else redeems my Meiser Sheni, there is no chomesh. But if you redeem your own Meiser Sheni, a chomesh. I will say now the shaila is, how do you calculate the chomesh? Ibaylahu, chumsha milagav or chumsha milabar. So we'll say quite literally again, is the chomesh on the inside or is the chomesh on the outside? Now what does this mean? Take a look at Rashi. So Rashi says over chumsha milagav al shava esrim zuz mosif arba shin chumsho shel keren. So we'll say, so essentially the shaila is like this. There are two ways you could calculate chomesh. What we call from the inside. From the inside, I will say would mean that you go ahead and you take the, let's say for example, you have Meiser Sheni that's worth 20 zuz. 20 zuz. So one way you could do, Rabbi say, is go ahead and split that into 5 parts. Split that into 5 parts. And therefore, again, what's the chomesh? An additional fifth. So therefore, again, if you take 20, you divide it by 5. Ultimately, again, that's 4. So chomesh would be adding an additional 4 zuz. You add on an additional fifth. So that's what it means again. Milagav, you split it internally into 5 parts and then add on a fifth. Versus milabar means that what? Milabar essentially means you're adding on an extra quarter. Then what you do is you split it into 4, right? Which in this case would be, in other words, 5, and you add on an additional quarter, which would be adding on an additional 5 zuz. It's interesting. So is the chomesh 4 zuz? Is the chomesh 5 zuz? So again, on both sides, the shaila is, are you splitting it internally into 5 parts, and therefore adding on an additional fifth, or splitting it into 4 parts, adding on a fourth, an additional fourth. Okay, that's the shaila. Ibaylu chum shemilagav chum shemilabar. Am Ravina Tashma. So Ravina says like this. Let's start from the Raisa. Habaylim omrim be'esrim v'chol adam be'esrim. Habaylim kol mipnei shemosifin chomesh. So Rabbi saying, listen to this. So in general, totally different topic over here. This is talking about over here, if a person went ahead and consecrated their field, and now they want to go ahead and redeem it. So remember again, the Beis Hamikdash ultimately again has an ability to see who's going to offer the highest price. But in general, all things being equal, the owner is generally going to win as long as he's willing to match any other price. Why? Because as the owner, when he redeems his own property, he also has to pay chomesh. So in other words, whatever bid you're going to get from someone else, as long as the owner is willing to match that bid, the owner is going to win because, again, he adds on chomesh. Fine. So therefore, I'll say this example. The Gemara says, Amar echad, harei alai be'esrim ve'echad. So I'll say, so let's say again, someone puts in a competing bid, right? So I just want to point out over here, if you look at Rashi, Rashi says, Mipnei shemosifin chomesh. So Rashi says over here, Rashi says, "Ve'esim shalahem havu chaf. And in reality, a 20 zuz bid or a 20 dinar bid, whatever it is, because it's land, a 20 bid is really 25 from the owners. Now, what does that show you if it's 25? Now, what's happening over here? That's really milabar. That's splitting it into 4 parts and adding on an additional quarter, a fifth quarter. Okay, so the Gemara says, Harei alai be'esrim ve'echad. So, for example, let's say Beis Hamikdash got a bid for 21, top of Nun Daled 54a. Habaylim nosnim esrim v'sheish. So ultimately, again, the Bailim, the owners, go ahead and would have to pay 26. Now, I'll say, just so I'm getting into all technicalities over here, what is going to happen over here in this case over here is the chomesh gets computed based on the original value of the land, not upon the competing offer. So in other words, the bid price increases, but the chomesh price, so to speak, remains locked in. So for example, again, the chomesh was already established at 5 dinar. So therefore, again, value plus chomesh would have been 25. Now what the Gemara says is if somebody puts in a bid for 21, top of 54, nun dalem dalef, habaylam nosnim esrim v'sheish. So ultimately, again, the owners would pay 26, which is the bid price plus the chomesh. Ha'esrim u'shnayim, 22, habaylam nosnim esrim v'sheva. The owners would pay 27. Be'esrim v'shalosh, ultimately 23, habaylam nosnim esrim v'shmona. Be'esrim v'arba, habaylam nosnim esrim v'sheish. Right, it sounds like the avod of the Kohen Gadol. Right, achos yachos. The Gemara goes on. So ve'esrim ve'arba habaylim nosim esrim v'teisha. Esrim v'chamesh habaylim nosim esrim shloshim. Lefi she'in mosifin chomesh al ilui shel zeh. So we'll say the idea. So it just says 2 halachas learning out from over here. Number one is that as long as the owner is willing to go ahead and match the bid, it's interesting. He doesn't even have to go ahead and be above the bid. He just has to match the bid. As long as he matches the bid, he's going to automatically win because his pricing or his willingness to pay is going to come up above whatever the bid is because he also has chomesh. But the point over here, I'll say, is that chomesh doesn't escalate. Right? Chomesh is not calculated based on the latest bid. Rather, chomesh is based on the original bid or the original price. Fine. But for our purpose, Rabbi will say, what do you see from here? Shmamina, chum shemilabar shmamina. Rabbi will say, what you do see from here is that chomesh is calculated from the outside, i.e., we divide the value by 4 and add on a fifth quarter. So therefore, again, Allah Lamaisa, if you have a piece of land worth 20, chomesh is calculated by dividing that by 5, and then the chomesh is going to be an additional, the extra fifth is a fifth quarter, i.e. the valuation becomes 25 shmamim. And that is the halacha. It's actually a very important halacha. That's how we go ahead and we calculate chomesh by dividing the principal into 4 and adding on an additional fifth. In other words, a fifth quarter, that's chomesh. Okay, incredible. So the Gemara says, by the way, kitanoi, this is really machlokes tanoim. V'yasav chamishi so'alav. So we'll say, so the pasuk says by Meiser Sheni that you will go ahead and add on an additional fifth. She'ehu v'chumsho chamisha divrei Rabbi Yoshia. That it and its additional amount will be 5. These words are Rabbi Yoshia. Rabbi Yonasan Omer chamishiso chomesh shel keren. One fifth of the principal. So Rabbi says this is the same machlokes. When it says hu v'chumsho chamisha, it means how do you calculate keren? So Rabbi says, so this how do you calculate chomesh? This is milabar. You divide up the principal into 4 and then add on an additional quarter. So there are 5 quarters that represents the principal and the chomesh. Other opinion says no. What do you do? So other opinion says chomesh shel keren. You divide the keren into 5 parts and then add on an additional fifth. Okay, same machlokes. So first of all, we could close the door on that, right? I will say the way we paskin when it comes to the calculation of chomesh is calculated milabar. So literally again, you go and you take the principal, divide it by 4, and then add on an additional quarter, a fifth quarter, that is your chomesh. Beautiful. Next, ibayluhu. So we'll say this is a fascinating shayla. Chomesh ma'akev or eino ma'akev. So Rabbi will say, essentially, for the redemption of Meiser Sheni, and by the way, I just want to point out, it's not only Meiser Sheni, right? We just saw when you're redeeming your property from the Beis HaMikdash, so you have to add on a chomesh. So there are certain circumstances where redemption requires an additional fifth. So here's the shayla: chomesh ma'akev or eino ma'akev. In any case where you need chomesh, is that chomesh ma'akev or not? Right? In other words, I will say, do you have to pay the chomesh in order for the redemption to be fully complete or not? So the Gemara says, Daled b'daled parek, v'achnafshe mosif chomesh, alma chomesh lo ma'akev. So we'll say, so do we see like this? If you have an item worth daled, right, worth 4, whatever the 4 is. Whatever the 4 is. So we'll say, so first of all, take a look at Rashi. Rashi says, chomesh ma'akev, achi lechutz lechoma ad shitena chomesh. So we'll say, so just want to point out what's happening over here. Right? In this process, so I have Meiser Sheni produce. Right? What am I doing? I want to transfer the Meiser Sheni sanctity onto money. And then what do I want to do with the produce? What do I want to do with the produce? Eat it. Right? In other words, I want to eat it as regular, mundane, unconsecrated produce. So the shayla is, do I have to pay the chomesh in order to be able to eat that produce out of Yerushalayim? That's my shayla. Okay, now back to the Gemara. So do we say as follows? So do we say on one hand, daled b'dal park, so let's say I have produce worth 4 zuz. So do we say, okay, it's worth 4 zuz, redeem it for 4 zuz, v'achanavshe mosif chomesh. So just redeem it for 4 zuz, and then I will say, and then what? And then what? And then go ahead and then at some point in time you have a debt of a fifth, right? So you have to pay an additional fifth, but that additional fifth does not go ahead. Rashi says, achenavshe me'elov ve'ino bichlal ha'pidyon sharba azuzim padu ma'aser shuhu kenegdam. So Rabbi say, do we see like this? When you have produce worth 4 zuz, okay, see, you go ahead and you deconsecrate it onto 4 zuz. And therefore, you know, say, that's the deconsecration. The fifth is an additional amount, but that's not part of the pidyon. That's not part of the deconsecration. In other words, the deconsecration is established with the 4 zuz that corresponds to the value of the item itself. But the additional chomesh, that is not considered to be part of the redemption amount. O Dilma, Arba v'chamisha parak v'chomesh makev, or maybe not. No, maybe the chomesh ultimately again is part of the actual redemption amount. That's the shaila. Amar Ravina. So we'll say, you hear the shaila, is chomesh part of the redemption amount, or is chomesh essentially looked at as what? Like a surcharge. A surcharge. It's not part of the redemption, it's just the surcharge. That's the shaila. But say, what's the nafkamina? The nafkamina is, after I redeem it onto the 4 zuz, can I eat the produce right now, or do I have to wait to pay the chomesh? Amar Ravina says as follows. So Tashma, hadmai ein lo chomesh ve'ein lo beer. So let's listen to this. Demai, remember now, what's demai? Demai is produce that you purchase from an amaretz. And remember, produce you purchase from an amaretz, I don't know if it's been tithed or not. So the halacha is, you retithe it. You retithe it. So demai, ein lo chomesh. Ultimately, again, there is no additional fifth, right? There's ve'ein lo beer. And we'll say again, in the Shemitah year, it is not subject to the laws of beer, which essentially, we'll say, by the way, even though it's a different beer, it's a different beer. How incredible is that, right? Again, now beer over here, we'll say by Shemitah means you can't store produce in your home. I should say differently. You can only store produce in your home while it is available freely in the fields. The moment it's no longer available freely, you can't store it in your home. I'll say, but how beautiful is that? Right? Beer Shemitah, beer Chametz on Erev Pesach. I will say, what are the chances? This is ridiculous. What are the chances? A beautiful kiss from the Ribbon Shalom on Erev Yantiv. And I will say, you're learning Gemara like this. Come on, let's be honest. I know it's happening. You're learning this Gemara, you're like, what am I doing here? What is going on over here? I should have slept in. I could have gone ahead, played this at 2.5 speed, right? It would have fit in with my elliptical workout. That would have been perfect. I would have gotten the daf, gotten my workout, gotten an extra 50 minutes of sleep, and Shalom Yisrael. And then the Ribbon Shalom throws in a little beer and says, no, my child, you are doing exactly what you need to do. Life isn't always enjoyable, and what you need to do isn't always enjoyable. But just because it's not fun, or just because it's not appealing, doesn't mean that you don't have to power through. Sometimes in life, you just have to keep doing, as we say many times, the pathway to inspiration is often paved with long and arduous, uninspired activity. But the only way you get to the inspiration is if you're willing to power through the moments that are uninspiring. I'm not saying I happen to love these dapim. I think they're great, because to me, there is no greater hana in the world than to get to learn about things that happen in Yerushalayim, to get to learn about things that happen in the Beis HaMikdash, because just like we say karbanos each and every day, because in the absence of the ability to bring karbanos, when we say karbanos, uneshama parim sifasenu, saying karbanos as part of davening abosai gives you a kiyum, gives you literally again a kiyum in karbanos. Learning about Meiser Sheni literally is as close as I'm going to get right now to actually bringing Meiser Sheni. And then HaKadosh Baruch Hu throws in a little bit of beer in here to remind me that I'm exactly on the right track. So the Gemara says, Ha karen yeshlo. So we'll see, you see from here that again, when it comes to Dmai, so redemption of Dmai ultimately again utilizes the Karen payment, but doesn't have a din of Chomesh. So my time, what's the reason? Karen Dma'akiv b'daraisa isa b'dirabanan. Because I will say redemption of Karen, which applies daraisa, so therefore again even applies b'dirabanan. Chomesh delo ma'akiv b'daraisa less b'dirabanan. But I will say Chomesh, which is not ma'akiv daraisa, ultimately again doesn't apply in dinei d'Rabbanan. So what do you see from here? You see from here that halacha l'maisa chomesh is not ma'akiv. That chomesh is like a debt you owe, but chomesh is not a necessity ultimately again in the redemption of the Meiser Sheni. And because I will say, by the way, just as an additional point, chomesh doesn't apply to d'Rabbanans. So therefore chomesh will not apply ultimately again to Chomesh will not apply to Demai. So the Gemara says, "Limik tonight." So we'll say it's machlokes. Machlokes tonight. Nasanas kevelo nasanas Chomesh. So we'll say, let's say a person redeemed his own Meiser Sheni and he paid the Keren, but he didn't pay the Chomesh. Rabbi Eliezer Omer Yochal. Rabbi Eliezer says you're good to go. You can eat it. Let's say you owe the chomesh will be a debt that you owe, but the chomesh is not ma'akev. So Rabbi Yoshua Omer lo yochal. Rabbi Yoshua says, no, you cannot eat your meiser sheni until you go ahead and you pay your chomesh. Amar Rabbi says, Nirin divrei Rabbi Elazar, b'Shabbos, v'divrei Rabbi Yoshua b'chol. Let's say this is wild. This is wild. So Rabbi says that I think the halacha is like Rabbi Eliezer on Shabbos, and the halacha is like Rabbi Yoshua during the weekday. And I was saying, what's the logic? What's the Shabbos weekday? What's the Shabbos weekday distinction? So I will say, remember, Rashi says, B'Shabbos, b'pnei kavod Shabbos, lo ya'akev me'le'akol b'shvil chomesh. So I will say, let's say Shabbos comes, I redeemed my meiser sheni erev Shabbos, but I forgot to pay the chomesh. I forgot to pay the fifth. So I will say, so Rabbi says, for Shabbos you could paskin like Rabbi Eliezer, out of kavod Shabbos. This way again, enjoy your produce, utilize your produce, and the chomesh should not be ma'akev. But the halacha should follow Rabbi Yoshua during the week, that namely you shouldn't eat redeemed produce until you pay the chomesh. Incredible. Now the Gemara says, the Amar Nirin Divrei Rabbi Eliezer b'Shabbos, the fact that Rabbi says that I agree with Rabbi Eliezer by Shabbos, Michlal, the pligi afil b'chol, tells you that Rabbi Eliezer argues even during the week, and Rabbi Eliezer holds that halacha l'maisa, chomesh is not ma'akev for the redemption of meiser sheni. Mid the Amar Nirin Divrei Rabbi Yoshua b'chol, the fact that it says that the psak of Rabbi Yeshua is during the week. Mechlad the pligi afil b'Shabbos. Rabbi Yeshua disagrees even on Shabbos. My love b'hakim efligi. Suppose what are they arguing about? Rabbi Eliezer savar chomesh lo ma'akev. Rabbi Yeshua savar chomesh ma'akev. Supposedly what this sounds like over here is the machlokas. What's the machlokas? Is chomesh ma'akev or not? As Rabbi say, when I redeem my meiser sheni, there are two buckets of payment. There is Karen, principal, and then there's the additional fifth. So the shaila is, everyone agrees, obviously, you can't deconsecrate meiser sheni produce if you don't pay the Karen. The shaila is, do you need to pay the additional fifth in order to have complete deconsecration of meiser sheni produce? Rabbi Eliezer, no. Again, I will say, just to be clear, everyone agrees you have to pay the chomesh. The shaila is payment of the chomesh a necessity for the deconsecration of the meiser sheni produce? So Rabbi Eliezer says no. Rabbi Yoshua says yes. That's what the Gemara is suggesting over here is their fundamental machlokes. I want to show you. Okay, you know what? We'll get to it in. So much to do. Okay, we'll leave it for now. So Rav Papa. So Rav Papa says, that's the consideration. So Rav Papa says, actually, that's not the machlokes. Lo, the chuli alma chomesh lo ma'akev. Rav Papa suggests everyone agrees chomesh is not ma'akev. Chomesh is not ma'akev. The hacha says that very interesting. The chayshina lepshiusa kamiflagi. They will say here the machlokes is, are we choshesh for pshia? So you will say, this is such an incredible yisod. What do we choshesh for? Are we choshesh for negligence? As I will say, this is so fascinating. The one way we could ensure that you're going to pay that chomesh is how? It's the one way to ensure you're not allowed to eat the produce until you pay the chomesh. If we tell you that you can go ahead and eat the produce with paying the principal, Karen, but just do the chomesh when you get to it. We'll say, what is going to happen? Pshia. As we'll say, and this in general, so the Gemara says, Mar savra chayshina l'pshiusa. So one opinion, i.e. Rabbi Yoshua holds, they're a choshesh for pshia. And if we don't make you pay the fifth on the front end before you consume the produce, we are concerned that you're going to be negligent in paying the fifth. Umar savar lo chayshin lepshusa. And ultimately, again, the other opinion says that we're not choshesh for pshusa. So we'll say it is such an incredible yisod. So therefore, we'll say in Rav Papa's model, everyone agrees that me'eker adin, the chomesh is not ma'akev. Chomesh is not ma'akev. In other words, what's ma'akev is the keren. You pay the value of the produce, you deconsecrate that onto money, and now the chomesh essentially is an additional fifth that you are chai for, which I will say, it makes sense, right? Why does that make sense? Because if the chomesh was really ma'akev, then what? Then it should be rolled in. Then it shouldn't be called chomesh. It should just be rolled into the actual amount of redemption. The fact that you have these two payments of keren and chomesh indicates to us that they're different. That they're different. So therefore, me'ikar adin, what allows you to eat ma'aser sheni produce? When you go and you consecrate the value onto money. And now the chomesh is an additional amount that you owe when you deconsecrate your own ma'aser sheni produce. So if that's the case, so why, according to Rabbi Yoshua, can't you eat ma'aser sheni until you actually pay the actual chomesh as well? Pshusa. We are concerned about negligence. We are concerned that if halacha l'maisa, we don't make you pay that before you eat it, you're not going to come to pay it. So we'll say, it's such an incredible idea. Essentially, it's a difference in life between seeing something as voluntary or obligatory. So we'll say, when something stands in your way before doing something else, then it's obligatory. When it's obligatory, something amazing happens, which is, it gets done. It gets done. It gets done. Let's say, on the other hand, when something is optional, right, or when something is not right, it's not just when it's not obligatory, then sometimes it gets done and sometimes it doesn't get done. I will say, what an incredible and profound metaphor for life. In other words, I will say, if you want to get something done in life, the way to get it done is to tell yourself, not that this is a nice pursuit. Oh, this would be great. This is a beautiful dream or aspiration. You have to make it mandatory. If it's not mandatory, it doesn't get done. I will say we know this. I will say it's the same thing about getting up for daf in the morning, right? If getting up for daf in the morning is something I do as long as I get enough sleep, right? Unless like you're 4 years old and going to sleep at 9 o'clock at night, no one ever has enough sleep getting up in the morning. So again, if it's optional, then it won't happen. If it's mandatory, then I will say that I'm just using this as an example because we're all here already. I'm saying like, if getting up for daf in the morning is no different than putting on tefillin, both are a mandatory part of my day, that's how things get done. It's an incredible yesod in life. If you need to get something done, you need to make it mandatory. The moment that is optional is the moment it simply does not occur. It's human nature. It was no different times of the Gemara as it is now. Incredible. So therefore, that seems to be where the Gemara, ends off, right? Where the Gemara seems to indicate that halacha l'maisa, that whereas me'ikar adin, the additional chomesh really is not ma'akev. That you could eat the deconsecrated produce as soon as you've deconsecrated the keren, the principle. But halacha l'maisa, we're not going to let you eat the deconsecrated ma'aser sheni until you pay the chomesh. Why? Mishum pshusa. We're afraid you're going to be negligent. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, hakol modim behekdish shechilal. Hakol modim behekdish shechilal. However, gizbar tovno sobashuk ubehekdish. Sorry. So the Gemara listen to this. Rabbi Yochanan says, however, we'll say, remember, other case of chomesh is by hekdish, consecrated property. I have consecrated property, either that I consecrated, right? I consecrate my property, and I want to redeem it from the Beis HaMikdash. So when you do that, you could do that, but you have to pay an additional fifth. Everyone agrees, this is incredible, everyone agrees that Allah Chalamaisa, when it comes to that hekdish, that you could utilize the property even before you pay the fifth. Why? Because I will say for the Beis HaMikdash, there's a gizbar, there's a treasurer, and what? Somebody's going to be nudging you. Somebody's going to be nudging you in the shuk. So the Gemara says, I just want to point out just another beautiful... I just want to tell you very quickly, right? I'll say another incredible Erev Pesach, allusion over here to the shuk. And I will say, we start the Haggadah with halach ma'anya, right? And the interesting part about halach ma'anya is that why is it in Aramaic? Why is it Aramaic? The Minchas Asher of Asher Weiss has a beautiful, beautiful insight, and he explains that I will say in Erev Pesach, you had to offer up the Korban Pesach, and halavai we should be Zilcha Mirtz Hashem. We should be Zilcha Mirtz Hashem. It's still time to have the Korban Pesach. I see Rabbi Jerry Wolansky is with us on Zoom. I am part of his Chabura for Korban Pesach. He has a Chabura. He's ready just in case, and I have a seat, Baruch Hashem. I have a piece of lamb. I have the Kizayis of Korban Pesach waiting for me in Eretz Yisrael Mirtz Hashem. Halavai should be Zilcha to eat it. So listen to this. So what's the halacha? The halacha is like this. The halacha is Karan Pesach is you have to have a chabura because it was eaten for dessert. So you just it could happen. Let's say I have a small family. I have a lamb, and now I will say, but I don't have enough people in my family to eat Karan Pesach. So what would you do? You would go into the marketplace on Erev Pesach, and you would look for chevra. And what would you say? Kol dichvin yesei v'yechol. Kol ditzrich yesei v'yifsach. See, I both say, if you look in the English translations of our Haggadahs, it never works. How do they translate Kol ditzrich yesei v'yifsach? Whoever is in need, let him come and pass over. Almost as if Passovering is a verb, right? Let him come and no, because that's not what it means. Kol ditzrich yesei v'yifsach means whoever doesn't have a chelik for Karban Pesach, come and join me. And where would you recite this? In the shuk. And what was the vernacular that people often spoke? Aramaic. So the Minchas Asher posits that is literally the line that they would say in the marketplaces of Yerushalayim, Ir HaKodesh, on Erev Pesach when the Beis HaMikdash stood. And that's the very line. We say it now, Zecher LaMikdash. You say it now, Zecher LaChorban. That's how we start the Haggadah, remembering what was. But that was line of us. I learn it well. Called Ditzrech Yesei V'Yifsach. Because if you have a small family and you have a beautiful sheep and you need more people, that's the line you're going to go out and say in the marketplace. So I'll say, so it just brings us up in my heart, the shuk. So the same now. Now, by the way, when you're in the shuk, the gizbar might find you, and the gizbar might say, hey, deadbeat, right? Pay up. You owe another chomesh. So the Gemara suggests that when it comes to the Beis HaMikdash, there's no concern about pshia by the chomesh because the gizbar would go ahead and find you. So therefore, again, when it comes to being podeh things from the mikdash, they're nifta, they are redeemed even without the chomesh because you had a gizbar who was nudging you. Okay, so let's go weiter. So the Gemara says, really, is that true? We learned if you gave the Karen, did he give the chomesh? Rabbi Elazar Omer Chilo. Rabbi Elazar says it's redeemed. The Chum lo Chilo. Chum say it's not redeemed. So the Gemara says, Amar Rabbi, Nirin Divrei Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Hagdish. So ultimately, again, and Rabbi said, I agree with Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Hagdish, for Divrei Chacham Meiser, Mida Amar Nirin Divrei Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Hagdish. The fact that it says that the words of Rabbi Eliezer appear to be Rabbi Hagdish, Michlal, de Paligafilu B'Meiser. Sounds like he argues even by Meiser. I mean, the Amar Nirin Divrei Chacham B'Meiser, Michlal de inhu pligia filu behekdish. That makes it sound like he disagrees even by hekdish. Ella itmar hachiyata. So therefore, Rabbi say it sounds like the machlokes is by hekdish as well. Rather, you have to say it like this: Am Rabbi Yochanan hakol modim b'shabes behekdish shechilal. So Rabbi say everyone agrees. Listen to this. That ultimately, again, if you have an item of hekdish that you redeemed before Shabbos but didn't pay the chomesh, everyone agrees, Rabbi say, that the item is considered redeemed and ready for use on Shabbos. Why? Number one, that it's Shabbos, and we don't want to stare your oneg Shabbos. And furthermore, the Gizbar is going to find you. He's going to track you down, and ultimately, again, make you pay. Okay, Amar Rami Bar Chama. Hari Amru, Hegdish. So I'll say, so therefore, again, halacha l'maisa, just what comes out of this is, although me'ikar adin, the chomesh is not ma'akev, but yet you cannot use ma'aser sheni produce until you pay the chomesh. But not because chomesh is ma'akev, but rather why? Chashina l'pshusa. We are concerned that if we let you consume it without paying the chomesh, that what's going to happen? You're not going to end up paying it. Incredible. Aray Barchama, Hari Amru, Hekdish eno mischala al karka, D'rachmana Amru v'nasan ha'kesev v'kamlo. So we'll say the halacha is Hekdish, right? So we'll say if you have a piece of property that is Hekdish and you now want to redeem it, so remember again, you have to pay principal plus a fifth. The principal has to be paid with money. Has to be paid with money, and ultimately, again, cannot be paid. And ultimately, again, cannot be paid with karka. Truma, ema mishtalames, ema min achulin. Truma, was like can only be paid through chulin. Sh'dirachmana amar v'nasan hakoines hakodesh davar eliyos kodesh. So we'll say now this is not the case. If I'm a non-kohen, which I'm a zar, and I go ahead and I consume truma. accidentally. So now I have to pay back the coin, the truma. I have to pay with chulin. I have to pay with unconsecrated produce. So we'll say if you consume truma produce, you have to pay back produce, unconsecrated produce. Chumsha ma sheishtalim min chulin. So we'll say, now listen to this. What about the chomesh? Does the chomesh have to be paid? Does the chomesh have to be paid from chulin as well? Meiser in mischala ala asimo. Similarly, again, meiser. We'll say if you go ahead and I have meiser sheni. You can't redeem meiser sheni on an asimon. So we'll say what's an asimon? Essentially an unminted coin. Unminted coin. Drachman amar v'tzarta kesef bi'adecha. The rabbis called davar sheish lav tzura. So we'll say because again for halacha l'maisa for Meiser Sheni redemption, you have to use coin that has a tzura, that has an image on it. So chumsha ma'asheis chala asimon. So we'll say, what about the chomesh? What about the additional chomesh of Meiser Sheni? Can that be redeemed on an asimon? So we'll say, see here what the shaila is. The shaila is, does the chomesh resemble the keren? In other words, do we say whatever is used for keren payment has to be used for chomesh, or maybe no? Maybe chomesh is reckoned differently, and you can use whatever you want for chomesh. So eskal gemilsa, so umata l'kamei de Rava. So we'll say the matter escalated; it came before Rava. Amalu Amakra Alav l'Ravos Chumsha Kamosa. So Rava Paskin, Alav means chomesh is treated exactly like keren, and whatever type of payment you need for keren, same type of payment you need for chomesh. Ravina, Afana Namitanina. Ravina said, we also learned, Hagonev Truma Valo Achla Meshalim Tashlume Kefal Drme Truma. So we also learned this, that if you steal Truma, this is actually very interesting. If you steal Truma, but you don't eat it. So we'll say, so now what does that mean? The Truma is be'en, the Truma is extant. What's the halacha when you steal an item and the item is still in existence? What's the halacha? The item goes back. So we'll say, now you stole, you owe kefel. So we'll say, so what do you do? Mishalim tashlume kefal d'mei truma. So again, if you didn't go ahead and eat it, so you pay back the Truma plus the amount of kefel. Achla, what happens if you ate the Truma? Mishalim shnei karanim, so you pay keren times 2. Chomesh, so the Gemara says, v'chomesh, keren v'chomesh min achulin, ba'keren d'mei truma. So ultimately, again, I will say, so halacha l'maisa, you pay keren and chomesh from chulin, and ultimately again, but the keren represents the mei truma. And I will say now, remember, the value of truma is never worth the same as chulin, right? Why not? Diminished customer base. So I'll say this is actually interesting. That truma on the open market always demands less money than keren, which feels wrong to say that, right? It feels wrong to say that because halacha l'maaseh keren is truma is hektish, but nevertheless, it's supply and demand. There's less demand. So we'll say shma mina amud beis nundal me shma mina chumsho kimoso shma mina. So we'll say bottom line halacha l'maaseh. So we're getting a lot of halacha l'maaseh. What's the takeaway? Takeaway is whatever you have to pay keren from is exactly what you have to pay chomesh on. So let's just keep it in the family. We're talking about Meiser Sheni. So the same way that Meiser Sheni has to be paid or has to be redeemed, the keren has to be redeemed with a minted coin, a coin with a surah, so too the chomesh requires a minted coin as well. Incredible. And that applies to anything else which has a chomesh. Amarava, Gabe, so the Gemara says, Gabe Gezel Ksiv Chamishiso Yosef Alav. So we'll say by Gezel it says, and you will pay the additional fifth. Rashi says over Gabe Gezel Ksiv, Gabe Asham Gzelos Ksiv Im Gazal V'Kafar V'Nishpa L'Sheker Chamishiso Chamishios Harbe. So let's remember again, what's the halach over here? We had this, remember again, in the previous parak of Bava Metzia. I steal an item. And then I will say, what happens? I'm confronted. Now, this works beautifully in the case of a shomer as well, right? I steal an item, and then I will say, I swear that I did not steal it, and then I admit that I steal it. What's the halacha? You have to pay keren, and you have to bring in asham gzelos, and you have to pay an additional fifth. So Bosai says v'chamishiso Yosef alav. Now Bosai, that word v'chamishiso sounds like many fifths. Utnan nasan lo asa keren v'nishpala ala chomesh. So Bosai, listen to this case. Imagine this following scenario, right? I was watching Ruvain's object. I went ahead and I claimed that it was stolen. In fact, I stole it myself. I swore that I didn't steal it. Then I admit that I steal it. So I have to pay keren, chomesh, asham gzelos. So Bosai says, I pay back the keren and I claim that I paid back the chomesh, but I lied. Which I will say is so wild. Right? Second time now that I'm denying the same money. This time I'm denying the chomesh. Rabbi say, what does that teach you? If I'm lying a second time, don't say that I'm a liar, right? What does it teach me? It teaches me that change is really difficult. Change takes a really long time, and it's really hard to break habits. And even I will say, when I convince myself that I'm ready to change, sometimes it's easy to backslide. So I lie a second time about the chomesh. Hareze mosef chomesh al chomesh. So I will say, sometimes you could have to pay a fifth on the fifth. So I will say, this time I denied the fifth. So the fifth becomes the principal, and then that's the Karen, and then I pay another fifth on that fifth. That's my additional chomesh. And you could keep doing this. Ad she'ismait Karen pachos mishav pruta. And we'll say this could keep on happening. Whereas if I keep on lying and denying the fifth, this could keep happening. And as long as there is a shava pruta in the fifth that I am denying, ultimately, again, I am going to be chayiv. Incredible. So when it says, Gami Truma Ksiv, Ish Kiyocha Kodesh Bishkaga, V'yasav Chamishiso Alav. So we'll say by Truma it says, if a person will accidentally go ahead, a zar, an coin, will accidentally go ahead and eat truma, so I have to pay back principal, the chamishiso yosef alav, and I add on the additional fifth. Utanan, we learned, ha'ochel truma b'shogeg, if a person eats truma accidentally, mishalim keren v'chomesh. Ultimately, again, you have to pay principal and the fifth. Principle on the fifth. However you benefit from truma, you eat it, you drink it, you anoint yourself with it. So we'll say you have to pay a fifth, and again, if need be, a fifth on the fifth. Yet by Meiser it doesn't say the same thing. Gabi hektish, I will say, we don't even raise the question. Gabi hektish ksiv, im hamaktish yigal es beso, v'yosef chamishis kesef erkecha. So I'll say, so the pasuk says by hektish, if a person, I will say, there's no matter person, let's say, consecrated his property to the Beis HaMikdash, and now redeems it. If you redeem it, you have to pay principal plus a fifth. Right, plus a fifth. So the Gemara says, Utanan, and we learned, Hapoda es hekdesho, if somebody goes ahead and redeems his hekdesh, Mosif chomesh. He adds on a fifth. Chumsha tanan, so we'll say, you see by hekdesh, there's the concept ultimately again of a fifth, Chumsha de chumsha lo tanan. But there doesn't seem to be a provision for what? A fifth of the fifth. So we'll say, so it's interesting over here. We don't seem to see additional cases where the fifth could escalate. So the Gemara says, my. So the Gemara says, my. So Gabi Truma Ksiv V'yasaf. So we'll say, by Truma it says V'yasaf. V'yasaf makes it sound like there are additional cases of Chomesh that could come up. Gabi Kodesh Nami HaKsiv V'yasaf. Odilma. Gabi Truma Ksiv V'yasaf. Ish Shaklis, so what's this? By Truma it says V'yasaf. Ishaklis le levav diviyasaf v'shadis al chamishiso havi le chamishosav. So I will say, so that could indicate that there are multiple. So I will say, all we're trying to figure out over here is like this. Just like I will say in the case of where you lie about stolen property, there is the ability to go ahead and literally acquire a debt for multiple fifths, right? And I was well say, how does that happen? So remember again, you lie, I pay back the Karen, but lie about the fifth. So when I keep doing that, what that could do, I will say, is halach l'maisa, incur me additional fifths. We're just trying to see, is it possible to run into cases of additional fifths by other scenarios? Gabe hekdish ksiv v'yasaf chamishis. So I will say, all it says is you add on the chamishis. Afa gav dechishaklis le levav divayasaf v'shadis le al chamishis sof sof havile chamishiso. So we'll say ultimately again, even if you take the vav of v'yasaf and add it onto chamishis, all you get is chamishiso. You do not get chamishosav. You'll get its fifth, but you don't get an allowance for multiple fifths. Okay, so the Gemara says, "V'seifuk le dahavile hegdish sheni." So now the Gemara raises another interesting point. Why don't you bring up over here, Abba, say that this is going to be a case of hegdish sheni? So Abba say, now we're going to speak here for just a couple of moments because we're going to be out of time shortly. There's in hegdish rishon and hegdish sheni. So Abba say ultimately again, hegdish rishon. Ultimately is a case of primary sanctity. So Hegdish Sheni is what we'll call attributed sanctity or derivative sanctity. That is something which derives sanctity from something else. A simple example of this, Meiser Sheni produce is Hekdesh Rishon. You redeem that onto money. That money is Hekdesh Sheni. Now, for all intents and purposes, Hekdesh Sheni is going to have the same type of status as Hekdesh Rishon. It really will. But now listen to this. So I'm Rabbi Shmuel Silber. A Hekdesh Rishon. The Seifuk Leid the Havile Hekdesh Sheni. Why don't you learn it out? That Allah Chalamayse. It's like Hekdesh Sheni. But Rabbi Shmuel Silber. A Hekdesh Rishon Mosif Chomesh. A Hekdesh Sheni Ein Mosif Chomesh. Okay, so I'll say now. Here we go. Rabbi Shmuel Silber is introducing now an entirely different part to this conversation. Rabbi Shmuel Silber says like this: that Allah Chalamayse on Hekdesh Rishon we add on a Chomesh. On Hekdesh Sheni, we don't add on a Chomesh. Okay, so we'll say, so now we're going to have to analyze this a bit. Amar Rapapi, Ravina. Rava said like this: Chomesh kitchilas Hekdesh dami. Then we'll say any case of Chomesh is going to be like a case of tchilas Hekdesh. So we'll say tzemach lokas. Do you add on Chomesh to just Hekdesh Rishon? Or do you add on Chomesh to every case of an item that is Kodesh, even if that item is Hekdesh Sheni, not Hekdesh Rishon, derivative Hekdesh? So we'll say, by the way, I just want to point out, this has ramifications for all of our cases that we just mentioned before. I know we went very quickly through it. My Havi Allah, Amr of Tevyumi Mishei Dabai, Amr Kra, V'asaf, Chamishis Kesef Erkecha, Makish Chomsho Lekesef. So we'll say it equates ultimately, again, the Chomesh to the money. Ma Kesef Erko. Mosif Chomesh. So we'll say just like ultimately again the kesef you add on Chomesh, av kesef chumsho nami Mosif Chomesh. So too we'll say to the kesef, to the money of the Chomesh, you also add on Chomesh. So we'll say, what do you see from here? You see from here that the halacha of Chomesh applies even to derivative Kiddusha. So I will say, so again, we know this. Now Meiser Sheni is not going to be a good rule because again, I will say essentially, once you go ahead and you redeem Meiser Sheni with money, so there's a Chomesh, because halacha l'mais, again, you pay a Chomesh on your own redemption. And remember again, you can't start redeeming that money for other things afterwards. You can use the money to buy produce, but that's really it. You can't really redeem the produce back onto money again. But essentially any other case, but for example, the case of where I steal an object, I swear that I didn't steal it, and then I admit, so I'm going to have to pay what? I'm going to have to pay Karen and Chomesh. If I lie about the Chomesh, then what Rabbi say? The Chomesh becomes Karen, and then there's Chomesh on that. So we see that there could be so Rabbi say, so the bottom line, we'll stop over here for today, but bottom line, okay, we did good and we got a lot of Pesach Torah also. But bottom line, I will say the way we paskin is that Allah Chalamaysa, there is Chomesh and there is also Chomesh on derivative items as well. I will say, tremendous. We should be Zochem Yeretz Hashem to bring our Meiser Sheni. Bottom line, we should just be Zochem Yeretz, I will say, to bring our Meiser Sheni ultimately to the Beis HaMikdash, to be able to go ahead and bring it with us as we are Ola Regel. There's still time. Should be Zochem Yeretz Hashem to a Yontav Av V'nochal Sham Min HaPsachim U'min HaZvachim. But either way, wherever we are, we should just be Zochem to continue to learn Torah together for many years to come. Shkei Chavra. All right, Chavra on Zoom. A good yantiv, such a schus to be able to learn with all of you. See you in Metzia Hashem on Chalamayid. The last year's, the dapper from last year's cycle have been posted on the podcast. So all of you on Yom Tov Sheni already, you can get a little bit of a head start. Shkayach everyone, and a Chag Kasher v'Sameach.